Welcome. This is Michael Lynch, and this is the Men Seeking Freedom podcast. I'm excited today to introduce Joseph Galloway to all of you. And what I always like to start with, for those of you who don't know, Joseph, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Iron and Spirit Fellowship Foundation.
Yeah, first, Michael, thank you so much for allowing me to be here and have this conversation and talk to your audience about what we're doing. I'm 2 decades in the field of teaching and training in martial arts, both in Mudukwan and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. For me, I have school I teach here in South Carolina, and we have another location with my instructor in North Carolina. With the Iron and Spirit Fellowship Foundation, for us, our goal is to create a nonprofit that allows those who can't afford martial arts the ability to do. I believe everyone should have the equal opportunity to train and learn what it is that we have to offer in the world of martial arts. And my goal is not to have just kids benefit from this program. I want adults to benefit from this program with reduced rates or pay for full coverage of their martial art lessons.
Do you find that children the children typically the entry point, so to say, of the family relationship, and then the children get the parents interested, or do you approach both of those demographics equally?
I try to look at both demographics of how to increase every area in our field, but kids are most of the time the big majority of what we get. Through those kids, we get their parents a lot of times. Sometimes it's about that, but with the rise of UFC and MMA and all these things, you get an increase of adult interest and mostly men interest in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling and wrestling and things like that. But I feel that kids make up most of our money in it.
For I have to admit, martial arts is not something I know much about. And so you've mentioned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I only wrote down the Mudi. What did you say, Mudi?
It's Mudukwan. It's a striking martial art similar to karate.
How so? For those who aren't familiar with those, what is in layman's terms?
Mhm.
What are the benefits of knowing something about that could intrigue someone to do some research on it?
No, absolutely. With the Mudukwan, like I said, it's very similar to karate. It's a striking martial art from Korea. With Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's a grappling wrestling martial art, and it's rooted actually back from Japan and was grown and created in Brazil, brought to the United States. So having both together, we appreciate it because then in self-defense situations and scenarios, you have the ability to defend yourself while you're standing, and if it happens to go to the ground, you have the ability to defend yourself there. When it comes to overall, a lot of people have this image that martial arts is about fighting and beating each other up and hurting somebody. And so for me, I like to help people understand that it's about your own growth, both not just physical, but mental and spiritual growth. The idea of confidence being built in somebody, the idea that their anger can become part of their control instead of anger controlling their life. There's so many benefits from the timid to the bold and watch people come together and from different walks of life, different cultures, different communities, different traditions all come together and do this one thing and create this community of people that work together. If there's a natural disaster, one phone call, I've got 50 students going to help each other. It's that connection that becomes so crucial. The problem is a lot of people see it as what UFC has made it. It's a fighting art. It's people getting hurt. It's getting in a cage. That's not the martial art, that's the sport. And we're trying to educate people the difference between the sport of martial arts and the embodiment of martial arts.
I really, I want to in a few minutes go into your own growth part, but tell the audience a little bit about when was the moment in your life that you were introduced to this and began seeing the value in it?
As a kid, I grew up with kind of martial arts in my life, and not through traditional ways. I didn't grow up in a martial arts school. I didn't have family members that did martial arts. I was thrown into a class at a community center when I was about 5 years old. The guy yelled all the time. It scared me. And so I cried all the time, and then I didn't want to do it anymore. But over the time, I grew up with Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles and all of these Jackie Chan movies and Bruce Lee movies. And I was obsessed with them. And so I would practice in my living room, whatever was happening on the TV. And for me, it was really cool and exciting. So I've always wanted to do it, but we never could afford it. And my instructor saw me walk by one day. He tried to talk to me. Every time he noticed me, I tried to run away. I didn't want anything to do with that conversation. And one day he caught me. Hey, would you like to try class? Oh, we can't afford it. I know my parents couldn't afford it. And that was the end of that until one day he said, hey, I said, we can't do that. He goes, no, hold on. And he hands me a stack of flyers and he says, if you really want to do this, get these out and then come do class. And at that moment, I wasn't even thinking about how to deceive this person. I wasn't the thought of just dumping him in the trash and then coming to class. That never crossed my mind. Like the idea that this person is giving me this opportunity was exciting for me. But obviously, he said, if you throw it in the trash, I'm going to know. And that was a little scary. How is he going to know? But I
But
believed him.
it was a really good faith gesture on his part.
Absolutely.
That's
And
what
from that moment on, handed out every single flyer I had truthfully with integrity. I attended every class he let me attend. And that ended up building into an apprentice program where he was raising me and teaching me how to not just be a great martial artist, but to be a great instructor at a young age, a great school owner. At 14 years old, he's investing in me this ability to do that by putting camps together, making me go through this rigorous camp to try to get me to quit, that I don't want this lifestyle. At the time, I didn't know what it meant. I just knew I was a part of something and I wanted to be a part of that something. And it wasn't right away that I realized what I was accomplishing, but it felt good.
How old were you, Joseph, approximately at that point in time in your life?
Yeah, I was 14 years old. I was the most unathletic nerd you would have ever met. I played Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously, as you can see, I wear glasses. At the time, I had very long hair, listened to heavy metal music, PE requirements. I would run a mile in 18 minutes. In case you don't know, that's walking. I couldn't kick above my knee. I was far from athletic. So it wasn't the athleticism that drew me to what was happening. It was like this sense of I can belong to something. I can be better in this situation because at the time I was growing up in Sacramento, California, there was a lot of drugs and alcohol abuse that was happening around me with my friends. There was a lot of ideas where if you don't join a gang, where are you going to go? So there was a lot of problems happening around me that I had to make a decision. And this was the gang I decided to join.
You had mentioned a few minutes ago that for those of us not in your world, you brought up UFC, and I see all the promotion. It's very, even though I don't follow it, it's very much part of the sports world in America, and it has this very aggressive look to it. But then you said something that really interests me as it relates to what we do in this men seeking freedom community, and that was you said you referenced the fact that it's really about your own growth, and that caught my attention. Give some context for the audience to ways you have and ways other people grow by doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not taking away anything that MMA fighters are doing. I've done a lot of those things with working with MMA teams and fighting in training for MMA. I've done all those things. I'm not taking away anything that they do. It's absolutely hard work. It is very hard work. But for me, it's the separation between a sport athlete and a status of position, right? So an athlete trains for the sport physically and mentally to do the game or activity or competition that they're training for specifically. For martial arts, it's everything that's happening in your life. How, for kids, examples, how's school? How's listening to your parents at home? We're engaging in these conversations with not just the student, but the parent, because our goal is to make them the best possible version of themselves that we can as adults. Hey, where's the depression coming from? Hey, where's the lack of appreciation for yourself? Where's your self esteem? Why do you believe that you deserve this job that's undervaluing you and underpaying you? What makes you disqualified from this job that can lift you up and make you the next best person? So we're always looking at their life outside the school and what can we use in the school to strengthen them and build them up to their next phase of life.
I'm going to shift gears just a little bit here, but still stay on the topic. As you've evolved into this role, what specific area do you think you are most gifted at when it comes to impacting other people?
Something that was brought to me at a young age from my instructor. My instructor, David Kirk, lived a life of army. He served in the army. He worked in law enforcement. He had a lot of experience of understanding how to deal with people in high aggressive, high stress situations. He's a combat veteran. And so when he met me, he recognized that God had given me the talent to know people without getting to know them, to know who they are and where they're going, to know more about them without having to ask many questions, to be able to identify quickly their motivation, to identify quickly what they're missing and lacking, identify quickly and reading both body language, vocal tones very quickly. And so he saw that in me and said, this is what we're going to focus on for you because we believe everybody has a talent. Once you find it, it's teaching them not to just rely on the talent, but to grow it. Because even though God gifted you that talent and you're good at it, doesn't mean you shouldn't train it to become phenomenal at it. And so he did that for me, and that allowed me to be amazing at what I do teaching wise because I'm able to see which student is struggling with something. I'm able to identify, hey, they're not getting it. Let me try to teach it a different way. And so I get to work through those different methods of teaching because I recognize what they're going through or what they may be struggling with.
Good for your mentor, David. You said his name was
Yeah,
David.
David Kirk.
Good for your mentor identifying that ability within you. One of the things I've learned in well through life experiences as well as researching for this men seeking freedom community is it's easier to be expressive and not suppress your emotions if you are aware of a calling or a gift, something that comes. One of the themes that'll be seen here consistently is what are these things that are as natural as breathing to you? A lot of people, first of all, everyone has gifts. Not everyone is conscious of them or gets to apply them. So I appreciate you saying what you did there because what we want in building this foundation for men to speak openly and have emotion A lot of it will come from, I know who I am. People have recognized what I do uniquely versus anyone else in the world. That's not,
Yeah, that's something I've actually recently realized and recognized is I didn't realize how lucky I was. I had found my calling and my gift at such a young age, at 14 years old, not recognizing and realizing that a lot of men out there are crashing because they're doing what they feel that is necessary. They go to work, they come home, they eat dinner, they go to bed, and they repeat. Whether they have kids or a marriage to handle, they're stuck in this loop because they feel lost and they start losing the sense of purpose. And I think what I had finally recognized and realized is take time to find what it is that makes you. So that way it can lead to either a hobby or career change that develops that purpose because of what you're gifted in. And I think that's something that a lot of men need to take the time to do is what is your gift? What calls to you naturally that you're good at? Doesn't mean you have to quit your job overnight. You can invest in a hobby that enhances that gift, that may lead to a career change, that will build a better relationship in your family because you're not becoming numb and automated in everyday's routine.
you were, that is a great theme of get acquainted. First, let's step back for a minute from that. Men often aren't the type who are going to sit around and say, Joseph, what are you gifted at? Michael, what are you gifted at? Now, maybe in your own world that is the case, but men don't typically speak to each other that way. And I like the way you position that because once you get acquainted with your gifts, you're right, there may not be an instant thing you can do from a career perspective or recreational perspective or family perspective, but once you get aware of it, it's not something you can easily pull out of your memory, especially if you had a mentor point that out to you. I've done exercises with people where I've said to them, text 10 of the closest people to you in your life and ask them, takes courage to do this, what is it about me that you consider unique or special? Since it's text, you will probably get instantaneous feedback in whatever the methodology is that people are comfortable with.
Yeah, I would even encourage less closer people, right? Because a lot of times when we text our closest friends, family members, they tell us a little bit what we want to hear, and they think that's what we want to hear. And so I would encourage that once you get past that confidence barrier, if you're feeling bold to text that to strangers, people that you know but aren't in a relationship with, whether it's a friendship, family member, or close friend, see what they say. A lot of times they're going to be a little bit more honest because they're not trying to appeal to your feelings. You're just trying to have a conversation. So I would even suggest going farther to identify and weed out what, maybe people are being kind. Oh, you're an amazing person. You listen all the time. That's cool. But that's coming from your mom. Of course, she's going to say amazing, nice things about me, right? Or that's coming from your wife or your best friend. They're going to say nice things about you. So I think, blending in some that don't know you other than in a personal way, but know you from a professional way, things can stick out in those ways too.
Joseph, the audience we're talking to here, in addition to want no longer wanting to suffer in silence, a lot of the people that will listen to this and watch this are in their 40s, in their 50s. They've been successful in their life, although open to learning new and different things. With your expertise with Iron and Spirit, and let's think about the people listening who have no comprehension of the benefits of what you do. What would you tell a person in that stage of their life, or they have kids and they have an established career, maybe they have a very busy life, they struggle to express themselves. Talk to that person and let them know, if you were to get involved in something like what you do, Joseph, how would that benefit them?
A lot of times when we're talking to people that are thinking about trying martial arts, thinking about the idea or encouraging them, they're like, no, I don't think I could do that. It's always the same thing we say is the hardest thing you're ever going to do is stepping on the mat. And I think that approach with everything in life in general, the hardest thing you're going to do is the toughest thing is going to be taking that step to try, to put yourself out there to fail. I have two rules, and I give the same two rules to adults and kids. When they first start, number one, yes sir, no sir. That helps me establish, hey, I am a master instructor. This is discipline. The second rule is always try. You will never get in trouble for making a mistake. As a teacher, it is my job to correct mistakes. It is my job to make people better. So if they stop trying and they can't make a mistake, I can't grow. If they don't make any mistakes, I'm out of job. I have nothing left to teach. So I always have those two rules for people to start with. And I think having that idea in life is important also, no matter what they're doing. Number one, establish a sense of discipline. That means doing things even when we don't want to. And then taking that chance. Yes, you're going to make a mistake, but it means it's an opportunity to learn how to better or fix something. Understand that you're not going to get in trouble for making a mistake. It's an opportunity to learn, to move forward.
The fear of, as someone who has been a struggling golfer, one of the interesting things about golf, and you're triggering this, is if you're ever going to take up golf, the first rule is get comfortable humiliating yourself. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits to it, and I don't mean to discourage anybody from, but you're bringing up the good point of starting something is always the toughest stage, because then once you get into it, even if there's a feeling of failure or struggle, you've at least given yourself the sense of what in golf, you're outdoors. In golf, you meet, if you allow yourself to, very interesting people and develop some very healthy conversations. That has nothing to do with the quality of how you're putting the ball on the face of the club and hitting a good shot. But let's go back to the question I was going to ask you was, do you find yourself, because you teed it up there, pun intended, you help people clinically with the actual martial arts. How much time do you spend, because you were going there, how much time do you spend on the mental health part of all this?
Oddly enough, there's no measurement. When it comes to day one, like I said, those two rules, right? From day one, that sets up a mental health position. So from day one to day 50 to day 1000, every lesson, every class is pushing both the physical body and the mental health aspect. We're looking across the floor, seeing who's struggling physically, who's struggling mentally, who's moving to the next step, and who's falling behind. We're always teaching to the highest denominator, so those have to strive to be as good as them. We're not teaching to the easiest level for those to pull people back. We don't want to pull people back. We want to push people forward. We believe that the high tide raises all ships. If we're able to put an established standard, and it's a high standard, and let them know, hey, it's okay. We're not perfect. We're not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but I still want you to push for it. We're by them. We're next to them. We're pushing with them to the point where eventually they don't need us there. They just enjoy us to be there with them. They don't need us to hold their hand. They just need us to remind them, hey, that looked terrible, do it again. And it's all about easing into the process. Yes, there's a lot of things incorporated in technique, speed, footwork. There's so many things incorporated. The thing is, do we shove everything at them at once, or do we gradually increase and gradually push? That's where the belt colors come in. I don't expect white belt to yellow belt to be at black belt level. But I do expect black belts not to act like white belts.
With each stage comes expectations and disciplines and all that.
Increased standards, yeah.
Hey, we can't do enough of that in society in general, can we? The question here's one that I want you to think about. Don't have to give the name of the person, obviously. Share with the audience an example of a person you've worked with who has had astounding results from working with you. In what you can share, talk a little bit about where this person was at in their life when introduced to you and something fantastic that they accomplished through that.
Yeah, I'll give you a good one. They started at about the same age I did. They're about 14 years old. They came from a place where depression was a huge part of their life. And thoughts of hurting themselves was a huge part of that life. Self-doubt, no self-esteem, no confidence. That was who they were. They not only started with us in anything that we do is tough, but they started with us in one of the hardest detail-oriented classes that we were offering. That being said, they would cry at every class because it's so detail-oriented, you feel like you're just an absolute failure. You're just making mistake after mistake. And knowing that they weren't doing very well, crying was a matter of fact every time. And I couldn't wrap my head around it at first. I was like, what is happening? What did they do? I thought I had done or said something because I just met the student, and every class it was that way. They, in same fashion, started training in the other martial arts that we offered to the point that they put themselves into what we call the apprentice program. It's one of the hardest programs that any of our students can ever do and achieve. It is designed to make you quit. It is very written in the military fashion. Every 2 months, you have a training camp where you get anywhere between 4 to 6 hours of sleep the entire weekend. It is filled with physical and mental exercises, including running and puzzles and martial art training, just absolute drag out to fight or flight response fighting. There's all kinds of high level of stress that's happening in these camps. They went into it going to prove a point because they were told they didn't have what it takes to do it. Once they did, they had no reason, they had no why. They didn't have a purpose to continue. This is a 10 camp program. They achieve each phase, it's 10 camps to graduate. I had to dig in and say, what are you going to do? You proved that you can do it, but what's going to push you the rest of the way? At that point, they had quit. After the conversation, they realized, I want to keep going. Through that exposure, camp after camp, they got involved in teaching. They got their black belt. They're teaching classes. They're teaching special needs classes. And that really put it in perspective of what they were accomplishing and what they were doing. Now, Same old person, cried every camp. Very emotional at everything that they did. This weekend was their 10th camp. This weekend was their graduation camp. This weekend was the first camp and her hardest camp. 0 tears fell on her face. Why? Because complete transformation from beginning to end in such a drastic way that she had to fight 4 people. Real fight, no holds barred, just go at it to see if she can survive. And the first response that she did, and she knew right away what was happening, the first thing she did, which normally in sparring we try to be courteous, not hit each other in the face. The first thing she did was hit somebody in the face. This isn't traditional sparring. This is, I need to survive. And that's something we try to get them to understand, because when we're teaching as instructors, some of people come to us with the sense of they want to feel safe and comfortable that they can survive a situation. And unless you experience that what we're teaching is real, what we're teaching can do this, you don't stand behind what you teach. They made it through it. They graduated. They came to my side of the table. So away from the team of people that are trying to graduate, and with the biggest smile on her face, treated them as though they're lower than her. She graduated. They still have to go through it. So it was really amazing to see.
I wrote down the phrase that you used at the beginning of that really stuck out was, you don't, what person, this is many of us, what person has been told in their life, you don't have what it takes? And it's funny, in your story there, I was thinking, I guess I'm thinking now, it's like a marketer for any person who ever's been told you don't have what it takes. That's about as discouraging and demeaning as possible. What's the next thing a person can do when they hear something that devastating? In just my interpretation of how you're explaining things, you actually have an answer for something people can do to develop these disciplines, release emotions, increase self-esteem. What I'd love to do, Joseph, in wrapping up is let's be thinking about that for the person who's ever been told you don't have what it takes. For the person who's sitting there listening to this going, what is that first step to investigate this? How can the viewers and listeners of this podcast, how can they reach out to you with their specific questions on getting started and being someone who has what it takes to be successful?
That's something I've always loved doing, is encouraging people to reach out to me, and always, whether they're in my area or not in my area, I feel it's part of my duty to educate people on what we do. It's part of my duty to give the information on not just what I do and what they should be looking for, but who to avoid. There's so many schools out there that treat it as a business of focus, where they're only looking at the dollar. Each individual student is not a name, they're just a number for them. And as long as they pay their bill on time, they get their next belt in grade. With us, and you'll see it everywhere on our social media, you'll see it everywhere on our websites, just plastered everywhere. Always earned, never bought. We're never afraid to fail a student if that's what they did. But we'll also stand next to them to help them get back up and try again. We're not afraid to tell them, hey, you're not testing this time. You didn't put enough effort in the cycle. We're not trying to set people up to fail. So if we can avoid the failure, we'll tell them honestly and plainly, you didn't put in the work. We're trying to fight against these people that are weekend black belts. They go to a seminar and get a binder and create a program and open a school, and now it's a glorified daycare. The music's playing louder than anything in the room. I think that's such a negative outlook, and it's hurting the expectations of traditional martial arts schools. I think it's setting up people with confidence, but a false confidence. They're standing confidently in something that they don't realize is not effective or not going to be there when they need it. I think it's going to get a lot of people hurt. I think it's going to get a lot of people building the wrong thing where it becomes arrogance instead of confidence. I think that it's just overall going to hurt the community of martial arts as they continue to try to create this franchise style thinking of martial arts. So if those who want to know, absolutely reach out to me. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Just search Iron and Spirit Fellowship Foundation. I have a whole team of people. When you message us, ask for me specifically. I will take the time to answer anybody's questions. If they want to do a phone call, I'll create a phone call opportunity. I love educating. I love working with people, even if it's down to researching what they have in their area. I've done it many times because they trust in my ability to encourage them to go to a great school that has a great culture to build a community.
Thank you very much, Joseph. What I take from how you've wrapped things up here, and by the way, again, people, you can reach Joseph, Iron and Spirit Fellowship Foundation on Instagram and Facebook. What I take from what you said is this: you don't partake in your activities for everyone who gets a trophy. This is something people earn, and I think that's in addition to all the benefits you've listed. So everyone, thank you for joining us today. If you found value in this conversation with Joseph, please share it. You can find me at menseekingfreedom.com, and I'll see you on the next episode.